Ready? Hi, everybody. This is Kingsville Baptist Church College Sunday School for May the 10th. So Christy's here, and the two cats are with us. And a special treat today. Danny is here as well, Christy's mom. And so about halfway through the lesson, I'm just going to turn it over to her. She'll take us through to the end. She's already made me promise that she won't have to be on camera, and Christy the same. I think 1 week, I got a haircut so that I can be presentable. They should get on and let everybody have a look. They're cute as a button if y'all could see them. All right, so last week was the cleansing of the leper story. And let's see, what was the big take home there with the cleansing of the leper? We chased a rabbit with the cleansing of the leper, and we ended up in the book of Hebrews talking about going outside the camp. So that was fun. The rabbit we're going to chase this week is in the story of the paralytic, and it's going to be about the Son of Man. So I'm going to warn you, Chrissy doesn't know this yet, or Nanny, but I'm going to warn you that the Son of Man, Jesus calls himself the Son of Man here in the story of the paralyzed man in the book of Luke. It's the first time in the book of Luke he calls himself that. And that's going to take us to Daniel chapter 7. And at the very end, the last couple of slides, we're going to be actually looking at prepositions in Greek and Hebrew. But, I like doing that, and so I'm assuming if you're watching this, you probably like doing that too. It's digging down to the actual words, and I know Nanny likes it too because she comes to college class whenever she's in town. So, okay, so the story of the paralytic. So I have A and B here, which is the main point. The first one is Jesus does this. It seems odd when you're reading it first. The story is the man comes with his friends bring him. He's paralyzed, and they can't get to Jesus, so they go up on the roof and they remove the tiles off the roof and they lower him down, and he can't walk. And Jesus comes over to him and he says, "Your sins are forgiven." So I'm just thinking, that's always struck me as a little strange, I guess Jesus knew the man wanted his sins forgiven. But it seems like at least his friends had him there because they want him to walk again. So, of course, he does heal him. But I'm just thinking if, weird comedy. But Jesus, the man's, "Your sins are forgiven." And he was going, "That's great. I can't walk." All right. So that's where we're headed. So here we go. So the Son of Man, that's where we're going. We're going to chase the Son of Man down to Daniel chapter 7. All right, so here's the story. Luke chapter 5. The news about him was spreading. So this is right after the leper story. Remember what Jesus told the leper? He said, "Go and show yourself to the priest. Do the sacrifice." And so the word has spread in the religious hierarchy. So they're all here. And it says it here. You see, Jesus himself would slip away. And then verse 17, one day he was teaching, and there were some Pharisees and teachers of the law sitting there. And then look at what it says next. Who had come from every village of Galilee to Judea and from Jerusalem. So we're talking about Judea, Galilee. This is like across the whole country kind of thing. They're all there. So the picture is all the religious superstars are around there. They come to check Jesus out. And then it says that some were carrying, we skipped the part. The power of the Lord was present for him to perform healing. Some men were carrying on a bed a man who was paralyzed. And they were trying to bring him in and set him down in front of him, but not finding a way to bring him in because of the crowd. They went up on the roof, let him down through the tiles with his stretcher into the middle of the crowd in front of Jesus. And then look what it says there. In verse 20, I have it underlined. Seeing their faith. I like that wording because faith can be thought of as something internal. Like, I believe, we think, are you a person of faith? What I really said was, do you believe that Jesus is the Christ? Are you walking your life following him? That's kind of what we mean by that. That's not, I don't think that's what's meant here. He saw their faith.
Actions showed their faith.
Yeah, they were doing something. And it was a revelation of their faith. He saw their faith. It looked like this. Tear the roof open to get down to Jesus. That's what he saw. He saw their faith. He said, friend, your sins are forgiven. I've got it underlined in red. Now, the first presentation of this, nobody's asking for it. Y'all didn't ask me for the one last week. Nobody sent a text message asking me for the broader presentation. But in the first presentation, I go through the book of Leviticus, and I walked through the patterns of sin forgiveness in the book of Leviticus. It's very stimulating. Not really. But the take-home message is, so I cut all that out. We're not doing that. Verse 21 here, it says, the scribes and Pharisees began to reason, saying, who is this man who speaks blasphemies? And in case you're wondering what they mean by that, there it is. Jesus is making a claim to deity. Now, we talked about this with the leper. Yeah? The leper is a story about Jesus' deity, the healing of the leper. So it's the story where this man is not supposed to be. He's unclean. And the word cleanse is the thing. You got to be clean in the Levitical story to come to God. And here now Jesus is turning that. God comes to him. And we read Isaiah, the call of Isaiah, where he gets the coal that comes to his mouth. He says, holy, holy, holy is the Lord. I'm not supposed to be in the presence of God. And so God sends the seraphim over and cleanses him, makes him clean. It's the same image. Jesus makes him clean. He doesn't ask to be healed. He has to be cleansed. And that's the key phrase. You want to be in the presence of God, you got to be clean. You got to be holy. And so Jesus moves in and cleanses him. It's a story. The leper story is the first telling of, yeah, this man is in the presence of God himself, and he's cleansed him. This is the second one, right in a row there in Luke chapter 5, and he says, who can forgive sins? So I think there's a pattern going on here. I think Luke is, he wants to make this point. And it's coming up in the next part of the chapter too. The point is that Jesus is in fact the God of all creation. And that's too much for these Pharisees to stomach. Okay, so next slide, 3. Continuing on Luke 5, but Jesus, aware of their reasonings, answered them and said, why are you reasoning in your hearts? Which is easier to say, your sins have been forgiven you, or to say, get up and walk? Now that's an interesting question. So if I wanted to say to one of you ladies, your sins are forgiven, you would know that I have no authority to do that. But I could say it. And how would you know whether your sins are forgiven or not? Anybody can say that. Your sins are forgiven. What I could not say is if you couldn't walk, I could not say, get up and walk. Unless I have the power to make it happen. Because that's an easy fact check right there. If I say get up and walk and you don't get up and walk, I'm busted. So Jesus asked them that question. That's interesting. And you know what they're thinking, you don't have authority to forgive sins. And what Jesus is saying is, yes, I do. Let me show you. So the healing comes as a way of confirming that he has that authority. So it says, but so that you may know, and here's the first time it's used in the book of Luke, that the Son of Man has authority on earth to forgive sins. He said to the paralytic, I say to you, get up, pick up your stretcher and go home. And that's what he does. So this is a story about Jesus' authority. And this is the first time he refers to himself as the Son of Man. So, quiz for you two ladies. If I said to you, Jesus is called the Messiah or the Christ in the New Testament, you go, yeah. If I said Jesus is called the Son of Man, he refers to himself as the Son of Man in the New Testament, in the Gospels. And you'd say, yeah, he does. Which one of those two terms would you think Jesus would refer to himself most as? The Christ, the Messiah, or the Son of Man? So you're cheating because you know the lesson, yes? So the Son of Man. Comparably speaking, about the same number of times? Way more. So I typed it in Bible Gateway. You see it at the bottom of the slide there, Son of Man in the Bible Gateway. And 102 times. Now, I counted them actually. There's a couple of times where it has like many of them, and it counts the M-A-N as man. So I think in Matthew it's 28 times, in Luke it's 27 or something like that. But anyway, you do it in Bible Gateway. It says Son of Man is done 102 times and 31 times in Matthew, 28 chapters, 15 times in Luke, 16 chapters, 30 times, in Mark, 30 times in Luke. So Luke has 24 chapters. I think that's right. Anyway, if you look on the right-hand side, you can see how many times he's called the Christ. A lot more in the New Testament, but if you look in the Gospels, it's dramatically fewer times he's called the Christ or the Messiah than he's called the Son of Man, at least in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. So whatever it means to be the Son of Man, Matthew, Mark, and Luke are presenting Jesus, the way he sees himself, as the Son of Man, way more than he is the Christ. So that's why we're going to chase that rabbit. Okay, now I went through Luke on the next slide, and I was looking to see if I could find patterns on the usage of the Son of Man. And if you look at the slide, all the purple and the red on the slide really connect the concept of the Son of Man to God. You could turn any of these purple or red ones that I've got highlighted into the story of Jesus is in fact the Messiah. He is God. The red ones, you can see there, are all references to what we would call it the second coming, or the coming of the Christ. So you can see like in 9:26, he's coming in glory. 12:40, coming at an hour you don't expect. Talking about the days, long to see the days of the Son of Man in chapter 17, like lightning in the day of the Son of Man, just like in the days of Noah, fire and brimstone. It's all that eschatology language there, the red ones. But you can see the first one there, forgiving sins, 5:24. And then in the next one, he calls himself the Lord of the Sabbath in 6:5. Look over at, on the right-hand column, it said look at the one, chapter 21:27. There's a quote there about the Son of Man, and he quotes right out of Daniel 7. So we're going to look at that one. And then you can see the one in chapter 22 is a quote from Psalm 110 about the Son of Man being the right hand of the power of God. Psalm 110 is quoted in like 6 different places in the New Testament. This is one of them, maybe more than that. I didn't look all those up. But anyway, I just wanted you to see the full spread here about the usage of the Son of Man in the book of Luke. It starts in chapter 5, and look, it just goes right through the book. It's hard to turn a page in Luke and not read about Jesus being the Son of Man. So the first time he says it is, he says, I'm going to heal this man so that you will know that the Son of Man has authority on earth to forgive sins. That's the first time he says it. So I think it's worthy of our time to investigate how do I want to say this? It's worthy of our time to investigate what it means for Jesus to see himself as, quote, the Son of Man. So there is one verse I didn't put on here where the Son of Man and the Son of God, he refers to himself both ways in it. So if you ask me who Jesus was, I think my knee-jerk reaction would be to say, Jesus is the Son of God. And that was the emphasis a couple of weeks ago. You know, the Holy Spirit comes on him in his baptism. This is my beloved Son. And then the whole temptation story, Satan is after him saying, if you really are the Son of God. So Jesus is the Son of God, and he is the Son of Man, and he is the Christ. But the term he most often refers to himself as is the Son of Man, which is a term from Daniel 7. So I think that Jesus would have been really, really invested in understanding what Daniel 7 means when it talks about the Son of Man. So we're going to spend the last, we're 16 minutes in now. We're going to spend the whole last half of the time just investigating that, the Son of Man. Okay, so slide number 5. Daniel 7, who is the Son of Man? So here are the key verses, verse 8 to 14 that we're going to talk about in Daniel 7. So I'm just going to read them through so that it'll put them in our head. Just this is all I want to say. It's on this one slide. I'll just read them through, make a couple of comments as we read them through, and then we're going to dig into some, we're going to go down the hole, looking at words and how they're used. Okay, so verse 8, Daniel 7. While I was contemplating the horns, so this is the verse that comes right after the vision where you get the 4 beasts. The lion, the bear, the leopard, and then the unknown beast in Daniel chapter 7. We're going to talk about that. So this is right after that. He says, while I was contemplating the horns, this was the 10 horns on the 4th beast, the one that is not identified. It's an unknown kingdom that's just crazy bad. It says, another horn, a little one, came up among them. So there's 10 horns. A little one comes up. 3 of the first horns were pulled out by the roots before it. This horn possessed eyes, like the eyes of a man, and a mouth uttering great boasts. Language in Daniel. Horn in Hebrew is oftentimes a word for the strength. Here would be the strength of a king. So this is some king, and you know, people who talk about eschatology love to speculate on who the 10 horns are and what's the 3 that are broken off, and the little one is at the Antichrist, and you know, all this stuff that you've heard. I'm not doing any of that because I'm not a speculator. Okay, verse 9. I kept looking until thrones were set up. So there are thrones that are being set up. He's seeing a vision. There are thrones being set up. And the Ancient of Days took his seat. So evidently by thrones, they mean, you know, the big chair that the king sits in. There's a bunch of them. The thrones have been set up. And the Ancient of Days This is evidently the Yahweh, the God figure in the vision, comes and sits down on one of the thrones, took his seat. His vesture was like white snow. I've got that underlined. See that? So that's the stuff, that's his clothing, like snow. The hair of his head like pure wool. His throne was ablaze with flames. Its wheels were a burning fire. And Christy smiled. The burning, yeah. Yeah, so there's a vision in Ezekiel that's got this flaming throne in the sky, yeah. So it's a very similar image. A river of fire was flowing and coming out from before him. You got the image? This God figure with clothing that's pure white. His hair was like pure wool. I don't even know what that's supposed to look like. He's sitting on a throne that's on fire, and it's got wheels, and they're on fire, and there's a river of fire coming out from in front of him. You got the image? That's deep imagery. Thousands upon thousands were attending him. Myriads, 10,000s upon 10,000s, myriads upon myriads were standing before him. The court sat and the books were opened. But I kept looking because the sound of the boastful words which the horn was speaking. It's like, it's almost like there's a little foreshadowing here. This is not going to go well for the one speaking these boastful words. I kept looking until the beast was slain. So you got stuff in your head about what's going on in Daniel with the beasts? The beasts in the book of Daniel? Now there's 4 beasts mentioned here in chapter 7. That's not the only place we've seen beasts in the book of Daniel. Daniel was actually thrown to the beasts, the lion's den, in chapter 6. So it's not the first time we've heard about beasts. Remember in the lion's den, Daniel gets thrown to the lions, and they don't hurt him. They represent his death. So he's thrown to his death, and then he doesn't die. And now we've got a reversal of that. The beasts of death are now being thrown into the fire. So it says, its body was destroyed, giving to the burning fire. As for the rest of the beasts, their dominion was taken away, but an extension of life was granted them for an appointed period of time. Okay, I chased that rabbit for a little bit too, but we're not doing that. I kept looking in the night visions, and behold, here's the first preposition we're going to look. This is like the second to last slide. With the clouds of heaven, one like a son of man was coming. The preposition there is with. Yours has with, Christy. With the clouds in verse 13. Mm-hmm. With the clouds of heaven, one like a son of man was coming. So the image here is the Son of Man is coming with the clouds. So this is going to turn into another Godmobile here in just a minute, because there are different translations of this in the Greek, and the way the New Testament authors do it is very intriguing to me. So that's why we're going to do it, because the Son of Man figure is like riding on the clouds. If I say Jesus on the clouds, where does your mind go?
When he ascended, and then when he comes back.
Yeah, so in the book, that's mine too, is first place mine goes. In the book of Acts, it says that he was received. And that's a Greek word that received is not, I don't know, it just didn't seem like exactly the right translation there, but I'm not going to chase that one. It's just that he's riding on the clouds, and he's going to be riding on the clouds kind of thing. And this is imagery that's in other places. God riding on the clouds. So the idea that the Son of Man here is with the clouds of heaven is something that's supposed to be ringing some bells for us, I think.
I think the clouds leading the Israelites also.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
that's not my first place.
Yeah, me too. Well, in the New Testament, my first place, I'll go in the same place. Jesus, he's received, he goes on the clouds. Okay, so with the clouds, return to that. One like a son of man was coming, and he came up to the Ancient of Days. Okay, so in your way of reading this, the Ancient of Days figure is like the God figure. He's the one with the wool hair and the white clothes and the fire and the wheels and the fire coming out from beneath him, yes? The Son of Man's a different character, right? The Son of Man is coming up to the Ancient of Days. So it's like there is an Ancient of Days and there is a Son of Man. So Chrissy's smiling. Why are you smiling?
Because something's marked out in my Bible.
We've done that before. What do you have there? Like, yeah, as or like. He came up like the Ancient of Days. So if it says, instead of he came up to the Ancient of Days, it says he came up like the Ancient of Days. That's different.
Mm-hmm.
How is that different?
One person.
Yeah.
Not two people.
Yeah, it becomes very confusing if he comes up like the Ancient of Days. So the reader goes, wait a minute, I thought the Ancient of Days had already sat down on the throne. How can the Son of Man be like the Ancient of Days? How can they be two people and one people? I find this so many times. We're doing Sunday school, you guys know, we've done this in so many places. You read through it and you go, well, is God coming or is this messianic figure coming? And it's all twisted in. It's like part of the Hebrew vernacular that these two, the God of creation and his Son, who is called Messiah and wisdom and the Davidic king, it's like they're two and the same. So I've heard other people say it before. Mike used to say it in Hebrew exegetical classes. It's like a Hebrew person reading this. They don't bother them. They can handle it. The figure is God and is not God. It doesn't bother them. It makes me crazy. He is God, but yet he's not God. I mean, how can that be? You can't be two and the same. I'm going, I don't understand that. So I always explain it by saying, this cannot make sense to me if I don't know Jesus, the story of Jesus. He's the one that makes it make sense. Okay, so he comes up to the Ancient of Days and was presented before him. Now, I chased that one for a long time, too. I think I left the slide in there on that one. Let me look. No, I took it out because it'll take a long time to do it. This is Aramaic, and I'm not good with Hebrew, but I'm worse at Aramaic. And was presented before him is actually just two words in Aramaic. So if y'all want to talk about it some, if we were in Sunday school, you could ask me, but you're not here, so you can't ask. Unless Christy wants to talk about it. She doesn't. Okay, thank you. All right, verse 14. To him was given dominion, glory, and a kingdom, that all the peoples, nations, and men of every language might serve him. Do you see the Hebrew word there? The Aramaic word there, palach, it means to serve deity. The word is used 9 times, and almost they're all, did I look at all of them? I don't know if I looked at all of them. I looked at the first 7 for sure on my Bible Gateway. You can see Daniel 3:17, our God whom we serve. Every one of them, the word is in reference to serving the Lord. So what word, if I said, do you serve the Lord? What word would you change that to if you could use a different English word? Worship. I'm a worshiper of God. That's what it really means. It means they're going to worship him. And in the Bible, in the Old Testament, no figure in the Bible is worshipped properly, who is not the God of creation. So this is another claim. If they are serving the Son of Man, this is a clear indicator that this Son of Man is the Creator God. It's packed. It's all packed in that one word. His dominion is an everlasting dominion. It will not pass away. His kingdom is one which will not be destroyed. All right, so that's it. Now we're just going to dig out some of the gory details. Christy, you'll slow me down here if I get... Okay. All right. Slide number 6. Summary statement at the top. Chapter 7 ends an Aramaic section of the book of Daniel. It ends the Aramaic section, and it seems to be the climax of the entire book. So look at Daniel chapter 2. I've got it there. I've got Daniel chapter 2, verse 4. It says, Then the Chaldeans spoke to the king in Aramaic. And from that point, chapter 2, verse 4, through chapter 7, verse 28, chapter 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, they're all in a different language in the original text. Chapter 1 and then chapters 8 to 12 are in Hebrew. And chapter 2 to 7 are all in Aramaic.
I see.
Well, first of all, Aramaic is a very close cousin to Hebrew. So a lot of times when I'm looking at the Aramaic words in Bible logos, I recognize them. My vocab's limited, but I recognize them because they're spelled the same as the Hebrew words. And the alphabet looks the same for the most part. I think some of the endings are different, like the nun is different at the end. So there's all kinds of stuff that we don't know. I don't know. But this is a observation that bears pondering. In my Bible, I got a Hebrew Bible here, and in this book of Daniel, it's in Hebrew, except right in the heart of the book, 2 to 7, it's all in Aramaic. What's more, look on the slide. The vision in chapter 2 and the one in chapter 7 are connected. And the one in chapter 3 and the one in chapter 6 are connected. And the one in chapter 4 and chapter 5 are connected. So the fancy word for this is a chiasm, pairing. And so these chapters are connected together. Let me just give you just a glimpse of it. Just go, Christy, 2 slides ahead. We'll come right back. You see the pictures here? Chapter 2, chapter 7. So there's a statue, and it's got a head of gold, and the breast area is silver, and the waist and the upper legs bronze, and then the legs and the feet here are clay. Yeah? That's the vision in chapter 2. In chapter 7, the vision is 4 beasts, a lion, a bear, a leopard, and this unknown thing. But clearly, the head of gold, Nebuchadnezzar, is viewed as the lion. And clearly, the silver is the bear. These are the Medes and the Persians. You see what I'm saying? So the chapters are connected. The visions correspond to each other. I'm going to read that to you again. We're going to come back to this. I just wanted you to see it just to get you warmed up to it. So back to the chiasm picture there, Christy. Okay, so what I want to show you, just like with a couple of words in boxes, as to how these are connected, because here's what I think. I think this Son of Man story in chapter 7 is like the climax of the story. It's the story that tells the whole story. So you read the vision in chapter 2 and you go, I think I got that. And then you start picking up other pieces and you get to chapter 7 and it's like, gotcha. Okay, so we'll go back to that 2-7 connection here in just a second. But here are the words. Look at slide 7. So in chapter 2, Nebuchadnezzar has a dream. Remember, he's going to kill all of his wise men because they can't tell him what the dream is. And Daniel and his friends are considered wise men. And so the guards come in and say, hey, time to off your head. And Daniel goes, whoa. What's going on? He says, well, the king's had a dream and nobody knows it. And so Daniel says, hey, man, I didn't get a shot. So Daniel says, give me overnight. He prays and God tells him. So he goes in and he tells the king the dream. He says, you saw in this dream a statue and it had a head of gold. And he says, You are that head of gold. You are Nebuchadnezzar. So that's the way chapter 7 goes. He has a dream. Daniel reveals this great statue, which has 4 parts. In chapter 7, Daniel has a dream about these 4 beasts that come out of the abyss. The lion, the bear, the leopard, and this unknown crazy beast. Look at what it says in chapter 7, verse 16. So he told me and made known to me the interpretation of these things. You see, these great beasts, which are 4 in number, are 4 kings who will arise. And the reader goes, I know what you're talking about. Those were the 4 kings you were talking about in chapter 2. So the vision in chapter 7 helps you understand the one in chapter 2. They go together. See that? Chapter 3 is the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So King Nebuchadnezzar, interestingly, Nebuchadnezzar has a vision in chapter 2 about a statue that Daniel tells him about, and he's like, oh, God is so great. In the next chapter, he makes a statue of himself. So you can see how they're connected. And then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego go, no, we're not bowing down. And then, y'all remember the story? They throw 3 of them in. There's one of them, somebody in there with them. And everybody likes to speculate on who that is. And they don't get burned in the fire furnace, which is interesting. Because the beast in chapter 7 gets thrown into the fire and is destroyed. And Shadrach, you see as things are reversing. Okay, so a fiery furnace. Nebuchadnezzar makes a statue. The 3 are delivered. Nebuchadnezzar says, God is the greatest. We worship God only. Blessed be your God. Daniel, or Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, we're all going to worship him. Okay, look at the next in chapter 6 is the story of the lion's den. This is the one where Darius makes this document. They can't pray, they can't worship anybody but him. And he signs the document. They just tricked into it. He puts a stamp on it because they know that Daniel's always praying. And so they go in. Sure enough, they got him. But just like Shadrach and Abednego were delivered, Daniel's delivered. And then Darius is saying the same stuff. So the 2 are connected. The 3 are delivered over here from Nebuchadnezzar, and Daniel's delivered over here. And then the end is Nebuchadnezzar and Darius are both saying the same thing. God is the one to be worshipped. So they're parallel to each other. And then, chapter 4, Nebuchadnezzar dreams about a tree that gets chopped down. It's another vision. And then Daniel tells him, this is how it's going to go. You're going down. And remember, Nebuchadnezzar goes out on his porch and he looks and he goes, man, I am so great. And then he ends up in the field with the long beard and the fingernails eating the grass and stuff. He gets taken down like a beast. Yeah. And then if you look, similar thing happens in chapter 5. This is Belshazzar. This is Nebuchadnezzar's son. This is where the famous writing on the wall. What he does is he goes and he gets the temple stuff that they brought from Jerusalem, and they're drinking from the temple, the holy things, getting drunk, defiling all the holy objects of God from the temple. This writing appears on the wall, and in comes Daniel, and he says, you're going down. And he actually was killed that very night. So the 2 stories are parallel, chapter 4 and 5. And then the last one, Daniel's thrown to the lions. In chapter 6, the lion is the first beast in the visions of chapter 7. Darius elevates, in chapter 6, elevates Daniel. Y'all remember that from up here a second ago with the lion's den. This is the one where Daniel's saved. In the lion's den, he comes out, and now Daniel is the guy at that point. And then there's this similar relationship between the Ancient of Days and the elevation of the Son of Man in chapter 7. And then the conclusion in both are that God is worshipped. So this is just a broad stroke over chapter 2 to 7 saying these visions and stories are all interconnected, with chapter 7 being the culminating, the climax of the whole thing. How's that? Okay so far? All right. So I'm almost done with that, and then I'm going to teach you some about ancient documents so we can do the prepositions as we finish. Okay, so here's the connection between 2 and 7. There are these 4 kingdoms, and I've got the verses here labeled in case you want to go back and look them up. We're not going to do that, but the first kingdom, the lion, the gold head, is Nebuchadnezzar in Babylon. The second kingdom, the silver and the bear, are the Medes and the Persians. And then in chapter 8, this is the ram. In the third kingdom is the kingdom of Greece in the sequence. From chapter 8, verse 21, this is the bronze part. This is the leopard in the beast story. So each time there's a turnover of a kingdom, from Babylon to the Medes and Persians to the Greece kingdom of Alexander the Great, you can see that the kingdoms are pictured as parts of a metal statue, and they're pictured as beasts, each one of them. So the book of Daniel itself is seeing the kingdoms that rule the world as beasts. That's an important thing we're supposed to see. And then the iron clay connection with this beast with the 10 horns on it, that you see the little horn down there and the 3 that have been broken off in my picture. The little horn. As we read that verse just a second ago, that's the little horn speaking the boastful things. Okay, so notice at the end of the vision in chapter 2, there's a stone that comes. And you see what the stone is doing? I blew it up on the right over here. See the stone hitting the statue over on the right-hand side of the picture? This is the way it's worded, verse 35. The iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver, and the gold were crushed. But the stone that struck the statue became a great mountain. See the picture of the mountain on the right? And filled the whole earth. Now, if you follow the sequence, the statue, Babylon, Medes and Persians, Greece, an unknown kingdom, the thing that follows is the stone crushing the base and causing the destruction of all the earthly kingdoms. That's the picture. So in the sequence in chapter 7, you see what has replaced the stone. The thing that will take over of all, I read it, all the kingdoms, all the nations will worship him. So the stone from chapter 2 becomes the Son of Man in chapter 7. So that's the big picture. Now, this is going to be a little sticky for the next 12 or 13 minutes. I'm warning you, but it's got a big payoff. So I know Christy loves this. So this is slide 9, Chris. So in order to understand what I'm going to say, you have to know these 4 things. All right? So everybody's got to know these 4 things to get what I'm going to say next. So number 1, BHS, or the Masoretic text. Chris, you know this one. The Masoretic text. If I say Masoretic text to you, what do you think?
It's the Hebrew version of what our Bible is translated from.
Yes. So the Masoretic text is the Hebrew Bible that is most often used. It's the version of the Hebrew Bible that is the standard, the gold standard. It's called the Biblia Hebraica Stuttgartensia. This is the Old Testament that we get our English translations from. So sometimes in Sunday school, I bring it with me, and after I've memorized a verse or 2, I'll read it to the kids in Hebrew because it's so beautiful. Okay, so that's 1. Number 2, the Septuagint. Chris?
It's the Greek translation.
She's not looking at the slides, just so you know.
It's a Greek translation of the Hebrew text. that was used in the New Testament times.
They were all reading Greek.
Right.
Yeah. So the Septuagint was it's a famous legend story about 70 guys that were brought to Alexandria, Egypt, and they translated the Hebrew Bible into Greek so the world could read it. And so there's a lot of the New Testament quotes that are obviously coming out of Septuagint, the Greek translation of the Hebrew. So the Septuagint is a famous Greek translation. It was done sometime around 100 to 200 years before Jesus, like 150 BC, something like that. Okay, third one. Now this one's unfamiliar. Okay, the third one is called the Old Greek. Okay, so this is a way of describing manuscripts. And here's what we say. When we say Old Greek, I'm going to say it again here in just a second, we mean this is the oldest recoverable Greek form that's a Greek translation of the Hebrew. So if I said Greek translation of the Hebrew, the first thing you think is? Septuagint. Yeah.
This is older than that.
Well, some cases, but in some cases, like what I say here, like for the Pentateuch, the oldest Greek form we have on record is the Septuagint for the first 5 books. But there are other Greek translations, older Greek translations than the Septuagint, for the other books of the Old Testament. And guess what? There's one of those for Daniel that's older than the Septuagint. A Greek translation that is not the Septuagint of the book of Daniel. With me?
Yep.
Okay. Theodotion is the last one. This is the name of a Jewish scholar. He wrote around 150 AD, so this is after Jesus. He translated Hebrew into Greek. Whether he was revising the Septuagint or working from Hebrew manuscripts, this is a whole big, all kinds of smart people disagree. No doubt, though, it was important to the early Christian church because Theodotion is quoted by many church fathers. His Greek version of the Old Testament is used in quotations. Okay, so you got it straight? The Hebrew text, the Masoretic text, the Septuagint, the Old Greek, and Theodotion. Okay, so there's a lot more, but this will serve as a foundation for the last things I want to say. You got them, Nan? You got those straight in your head? All right. Okay. So here's the summary up in the right-hand side. I'm on slide number 10. The summary up in the right-hand side. Matthew, Mark, and Luke all seem to favor the preposition on, linking Jesus to God as the cloud rider. So we did this earlier in the presentation. I'm going to show it to you. I'm going to go back. Chris, if you want to go back to the first, it's slide number 5. So verse 13 about the Son of Man. So here's what this is going to do. When I get to the end of this, you're going to go, these guys, man, Matthew and Mark and Luke, they were all over these texts, paying attention to even the prepositions for how they were presenting Jesus. So verse 13, I kept looking in the night visions, and behold, with the clouds of heaven, one like a son of man was coming, and he came up to the Ancient of Days. You see that? He's coming, behold, with the clouds of heaven. That's what he says. All right, so now back to the slide. Okay, so Luke chapter 21, verse 27. Do I have that verse in here? I do. Look at the last slide, Chris. Luke 21, 27. It says there, then they will see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. Is that what yours says? Mm-hmm. In a cloud? See that? In a cloud? On the slide, yeah.
Yeah, we said that's what it says.
I thought you were looking at your, okay.
I can. You want me to?
No, it's okay. I just want to show that to you. In a cloud. All right, so let's think about that for a second. I know this is crazy, but okay, so if the Son of Man is in the cloud, And if the Son of Man is on the cloud, I'm not sure that really makes all that much difference. But look at the way the different guys do this in Greek. So in the slide, I'm on slide number 10, Chris. In Luke 21:27, they're quoting from Daniel chapter 7. And it's in Greek, in the Greek New Testament to my English. So the Greek, you see the word Greek there? It can mean either in or on. You see that? Mm-hmm. And so Luke, the translator made a decision to say he's coming in the clouds. Because the Greek doesn't demand that. You see that?
Because it could be either or.
It could be either.
So the translator has to decide which one they're going to use in that.
Yes. In Matthew, however, he uses a different Greek word. And that Greek word is, you have to say on. So the image from Matthew's perspective is, he's
on the throne.
He's riding on the clouds. What you're going to see is he sees him as the image from Daniel 7, and he puts the two together by using on. The God of creation and the Son of Man are now the same, because only God in the Hebrew Bible rides on the clouds. Okay, so the next one. So look, in Matthew 24:30, on the clouds, the Old Greek. Can I say that now? The Old Greek of Daniel 7:13 uses the same word that Matthew uses. Yeah? Okay. Theodotion in Daniel 7:13. So Theodotion is the one like 150 AD, right? He uses the preposition with. You see, it's a different Greek word. With the clouds. Which is what the Aramaic has in the Masoretic text of Daniel 7:13. It has with. You see the the Aramaic there, M, with. So we can say that Theodotion has with, and the Aramaic in the BHS has with. The Old Greek has on. Okay, so why does that mean anything? Okay, so first of all, can I read the summary again? If you go to Bible Gateway, it has 50 different translations of Daniel 7:13. And four of them, one of them has got like this big long description. But four of them have something different than with. They have on. Three of them have the preposition on, and one of them has a big description on it. So what I'm saying is, translators had to make this decision. The question is now, why does that matter? Okay, I'll show you the last two verses there. See Isaiah 19? Mm-hmm. The Hebrew word there, al, it's the same in Aramaic. Al means on. In Isaiah 19, it is the Lord riding on the clouds. In Psalm 104, he makes the clouds his chariot. He walks on upon the wings of the wind. So here's the point. I don't think it really matters what you choose, but it's intriguing to me that the gospel writers, can you finish it for me? Help me say it. So Matthew, Mark, and Luke seem to be on purpose putting the Son of Man on the clouds as the Ancient of Days figure. So to me, the preposition being used by Matthew, Mark, and Luke suggests that they are processing this.
Well, to me, if I'm thinking through this, the images from Isaiah and Psalms are that image. That they also are carrying with them in their storytelling
Whenever,
of Jesus. Of
whenever they're reading or translating Daniel chapter 7.
These are images that are built along, that go along with them to Daniel.
Yeah. Tied up in a preposition. So I don't think it matters really, but in some ways, I think it speaks to the genius of the gospel writers, that they've got the Son of Man riding on the clouds, because that's the only person who rides on the clouds.
It's a deity. On the clouds gives it more deity than in the clouds.
I think so.
I mean, in the clouds he created, and he's creator, and yes, but it brings a kingship.
I think so. Okay, one more.
And you already have that image of the Ancient of Days there.
Which is what we're going to do.
It's a very vivid image.
Yes. So this is the last one, and that's exactly what you're saying. Lead right to it. Okay, so here's how do I want to do this? We're going to go back and read it one more time because this is the last one. So go back one last time to slide number 5. It says here, I kept looking in the night visions, verse 13. I kept looking in the night visions, and behold, with the clouds of heaven. And now what's your reaction to that? With? What do you want to say now that you've seen the old Greek?
Would it be on?
On. That's what I want to say. I kept looking in the night visions, and behold, riding on the clouds. Yeah. One like the Son of Man was coming. Okay, and then here's the last phrase we're going to do. He came up to the Ancient of Days. Okay, so Chrissy's nodding because
that makes a difference. That's huge.
Yeah, because she knows where this one's going. Okay, so back to the second to last slide. It says here, the old Greek, Daniel 7:13, has this Greek word here. I sent a text to Justin, Dr. Langford, to make sure that I was doing this right. So he's confirmed this, and I did it. I found it in in Logos as well. This word means as or like in the old Greek. Not up to the Ancient of Days, but like or as the Ancient of Days. Yeah. Theodotion, can I say that still? Y'all are good with Theodotion?
Mm-hmm.
Daniel 7:13 has Daniel 7:13 to the Ancient of Days, Greek. The Masoretic text has ad, up to, or until. So you can see Theodotion and the Masoretic texts tend to agree with each other, which is why we have in our Bible up to the Ancient Days. The Old Greek has as or like. Okay, so the question then is, why would that matter? And the answer is, it may not, but there's some places in Thessalonians and Revelations where it looks like the New Testament guys are aware of this. So like the riding on the clouds, this one where the Ancient of Days and the Son of Man are one person seems to be tracking. So look at Revelation chapter 1 at the bottom of the slide. Wait, let's read Shepard's thing first, okay? This is from Shepard's commentary. Dr. Shepard, some of you remember him, was on faculty at LC for a while. He's up at Cedarville College now. But he wrote this great book, Daniel in the Context of the Hebrew Bible, where he says on page 91, quote, "The Old Greek seems intentional in its identification of the one like a Son of Man with the Ancient of Days. Theodotion has two figures. The Old Greek has one." And then he references a bunch of New Testament stuff. So here's one of them right here. Revelation chapter 1, verse 13 says, "In the middle of the lampstands, I saw one like a Son of Man. His head and his hair were like white wool, like snow. What's missing there from the picture in Daniel 7? Okay, the fire's coming.
Oh,
So in Daniel 7, it talked about his vesture being white. But here he's got the hair, white wool like snow, and his eyes, here it is, his eyes now are like a flame of fire. But in Daniel 7, it's not his eyes that are on fire, it's the throne and the wheels and the fire coming out. Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
But at least we've got hair and wool and snow and flames and the Son of Man. All mentioned in Revelation chapter 1. So if you're reading Revelation 1 and you know Daniel 7, when you read about the Son of Man, and it says here, his head and his hair. And if you know Daniel 7, what are you saying to yourself? That's not the Son of Man, that's the Ancient of Days. So John here seems to me he's saying that the Ancient of Days is the Son of Man. Yeah? So he's tying the two together. And I'm wondering if the old Greek version is not the best translation here, as or like the Ancient of Days. Okay, before I read the last verses, Chris, help me summarize. Help me summarize. So Jesus is going to heal this man. This is where we started. They tear the roof out and they lower him down. And Jesus says, your sins are forgiven. And the religious guys go nuts. Only God can do that. Jesus hears this. Only God can forgive sins. And he says, which would be easier, to forgive his sins or to tell him to get up and walk? Just so you know that the Son of Man has authority on earth. Get up and walk. What did Jesus just say?
He just put himself in the skyline on the seat.
Did y'all hear that? Say that again. Say that again.
He just put himself on the skywheel sitting on the seat. It's
Yeah.
the same part. It's the Ancient of Days and the Son of Man and the two and the one and the...
He's the cloud rider. He's the Son of Man, the cloud rider. He's basically said, people, I've had students tell me before, where in the Bible does it say Jesus is God? They want to just go to a verse. And there are some verses you can do that with. But most of the time it comes at you like this, where, keep going. Most of the time it comes like this, where it's like, he is saying he's God. Yeah, Chris? It's just you have to know something about Daniel chapter 7 or you don't hear it. So he refers to himself most often as the Son of Man. So what we're saying is, more times than not, when Jesus talks about himself, he is saying, I am the Ancient of Days. Yeah? Okay. So I'll just finish reading the last section. Yeah.
In my mind, we're always saying that we think of Jesus as Son of God, and he is, but this makes us even, and that gives him the deity. Yeah. Oh, right. That's right. That gives him the deity.
Son of God means he's God. Well, of course, but
this is more
in the New Testament.
In what the Old Testament is describing him as, this gives it even more of that.
Yes.
When we're reading it, though, in our culture and language, he's a son of us.
Yeah, he's a son of people, man. He's one of the people. Yeah.
But if you take it in the context of Daniel, it's like...
when you put it in the context of the Son of Man from Daniel 7.
And that's what the Pharisees were hearing and made them...
They knew what he was saying.
that led into the crucifixion because they said,
Yep.
No.
That's right. That's exactly right. He was claiming to be their God, and they would not have it. Okay, I'll read this and then I'll just stop. I'm an hour and 3 minutes in. Luke chapter 21, there will be signs in the sun and moon and stars, and on the earth dismay among the nations, in perplexity at the roaring of the sea and the waves, men fainting from fear and the expectation of the things which are coming upon the world. For the powers of the heavens will be shaken. Then they will see the Son of Man coming on a cloud with power and great glory. But when these things begin to take place, straighten up, lift up your heads. Your redemption is drawing near. Be on guard so that your hearts will not be weighted down with dissipation and drunkenness and the worries of life. And that day will not come on you suddenly like a trap, for it will come upon those who dwell on the face of the earth. But keep alert at all times, praying that you may have strength to escape all these things that are about to take place and to stand before the Son of Man. Isn't that a beautiful way to think about it? Yeah. All right. I love you guys. Hope to see you soon.